4chan is a popular anonymous message board where post authors and commenters' identities remain hidden, and threads are temporary as they are deleted a few days after being created, depending on the frequency of posts under that board. Basically, that means you can be as honest as you want without repercussion. One of these boards is called X on 4chan. It's the paranormal board where things concerning the supernatural, the unexplained, and horrifying are discussed. The following stories are a popular kind found there. Allegedly real sightings of skinwalkers, that is. Be careful though. The skinwalkers they discuss on 4chan are often quite different from what we discuss here. Users there report encounters with people that only look like the people they know, or only pretend to be human in order to torment, play tricks on, or harm others. These are 4chan skinwalker stories. If you've got a story of your own, you can share it with us at darknessprevails.org. The Delivery. Posted on December 29th, 2014. Location: Washington, D.C. I'm 21 and a college senior from Connecticut. While I live in a semi-rural area, about 20 minutes to the closest supermarket and fast food, I go to school in Washington, D.C. Not the nice part either. The part where substance users are a problem and cops are reassuring rather than troublesome. I've definitely seen some things in my day. It would be good to mention here that I'm not some glandular freak. I'm 6'1" and 240 pounds. Most of it muscle, but Lord knows I could drop 15 pounds or so. I love to smoke, drink, and eat. Sue me. Being the good student that I am, I picked a real major, accounting, and I interned for a mid-sized PR firm doing accounting work and getting paid $20 an hour. College is expensive, so I deliver pizzas at night after the office closes. It's a cheap sort of pizza place that has an absurdly large delivery radius and is around 20 minutes from my house, 5 minutes from the beach. My place is north of there, and we deliver probably another 15 minutes past my house. I'm actually typing this at work in between examining the fine print on our client contracts to ensure that we are charging them every penny. Believe me, they do everything they can to short us. Anyway, basically, the further north you go from the pizza place, the more countryside it gets. I work until close, and this happened at around 9:45 p.m. I'm in the back, folding pizza boxes like a good little boy. The counter girl comes back with a delivery slip. She tells me this customer sounded weird on the phone, kind of like he was talking through a fan, or through his hands, and that he was kind of gurgling. My Washington, D.C. experience instantly makes me think of some user, if you catch my drift. Although around here it's way more likely to be some benzo freak. Automatically assuming some weird interaction will occur, I look at the address. It's basically in the middle of nowhere. I'm a little mad, because I don't want to drive that far, but screw it. Not to mention it's the weirdest ticket I've ever seen. The guy ordered a large pizza with anchovies, ground beef, ham, sausage, pepperoni, etc. Literally $15 worth of extras on top of his pizza. I go to ask the counter girl if this is right. She says she thinks so. She couldn't really make it out though, so she said she did her best. She's about 16 years old, so I cut her some slack. Maybe she was daydreaming while she took the call, so I'll just give them a call back to be sure. I dial the phone, and it rings 5, 10, 20, 30 times, but no one answers. I hang up and call again. This time the phone goes right to, "The number you have dialed does not have a voicemail box that has been set up yet. Goodbye." Okay then. My manager decides to just make the pizza as ordered, and we would proceed from there. I go out to deliver a separate pizza to a hilariously big guy and a couple who invited me in for drinks, but I don't drink or smoke when I'm working. I was hoping by the time I got back that someone else delivered that weird pizza order. Surprise, surprise, no one did, and it was again my turn to pick up an order. Begrudgingly, I take the pizza and get in my car. I enter the address into my phone. It's on a side street adjacent to a park locals call open space, which despite the name, it's actually about 500 acres of straight woods. It's about 25 minutes away, basically the edge of our range. I put on some dubstep and crank my turbo subby while taking off out towards this road. Now, if you're not from a rural area, this can be hard to explain. Winter in the woods is scary. There's never a single sound, ever. Unless there's something larger than a cat walking around. It's just you and complete silence. Finally, I make it to the address. There are a few houses on the street, but they sit on probably 5 acres, so they're spaced out a fair amount. I'm looking for number 1134. I pass 1130, then a long stretch of road of nothing. Then it picks up again at 1144. What the heck? I just want to get this over with and get the next delivery without getting attacked by some pillhead over something as small as a pizza. I try calling their number again. It rings and rings, then stops ringing. Wait a minute. Someone picked up. But there's no voice. Instead, I hear a buzzing or humming sound. It's hooked up to my car stereo and it's getting louder and louder until I just hang up because I don't want to ruin my speakers. The windows are fogging up at this point. I'm pulled over between 2 of these houses. Right when I roll the windows down, I am overcome by this odor of decaying trash, like driving through Newark, New Jersey. It's so gross, I put the car in first and I start pulling towards the next house, trying to escape it. At the end of the driveway, there's a stanchion with a light on top. The plan was to pull into this house and knock and ask if maybe they gave me the wrong number over the phone. That would make sense for these kinds of people. I'm probably 100 feet away when I see someone step out of the darkness and into the light at the bottom of the driveway. I sigh. Thank goodness, it's the guy that ordered. I'm expecting the guy to be all over the place, leaning over, acting completely out of his mind. But he's actually pretty calm. I stop the car about 10 feet away from him. He's wearing a big black coat that looks 3 times too big for him, even though he's probably got 5 inches on me. I don't look right at him at first. I grab the pizza and step out of the car. Then I grab the ticket and prepare change if he gives cash. I say to him, "Hey sir, sorry about the wait and for all the calls I made. The delivery's pretty far." There's no response from him. I realize I should be watching him considering the red flags. The smell is still extremely pungent, but I know it's not trash day. I get the pizza on the roof of my car and he's standing there under the light on the opposite side. I finally pay enough attention to get a good look at him. The guy is basically giant. He's wearing no shoes and he has ripped up jeans and there's stains everywhere. I try to get a look at his face, and his eyes seem to be sunken in. I can't even see the actual pupils with the light. From here, it's like they're black craters. I'm getting real sketched out at this point because the guy still hasn't moved or said a word. I stop the process and stare at him. He's staring right back at me with those freaky eyes. His head is sort of bobbing side to side, but not in any fluid sense at all. Kind of like a car door, like how it stops at halfway open, and then you give it another shove and it stops at the all-the-way point. I watch his head do this with no real pattern for about 10 seconds. I'm starting to get more uneasy between the stench in this head movement and the eyes, and him still completely ignoring me. I stand frozen, and so does he. Without breaking eye contact, I take my phone out of my pocket and hold it level with the roof so I can look at the guy and my phone at the same time. Curiosity overflowing, I decide to go to the recent calls on my phone, and I redial his number. The phone starts ringing, but I don't hear it anywhere. Wait a second. I do hear it. It's coming out of the quiet of the woods. I can hear a faint, distant cell phone, ringing about 50 yards away in the woods. I'm kicking myself at this point, almost soiling myself. The guy is just standing there still, doing the head thing, but I swear to God I see him smile. Finally, I get the courage to speak. Can you please come get this? Also, I think you may have dropped your phone when you were hiding a body or whatever in the woods. I laugh nervously, still thinking maybe this guy just dug too deep into the prescription bottle. I see his mouth open, head still bobbing, feet planted on the ground. He makes a sort of low, guttural, quick grunt, then a high grunt, then a low grunt. They are sort of soft, kind of like someone clearing their throat. At this point, I'm ready to book it to the driver's seat if I have to. Just as I go to redial that phone again, I hear him talking.
The phone's not mine.
The pause between the phone's not and mine was way too long. Phone's not literally sounded like one word. Mine came off an octave higher. My mind is in DEFCON 5, full-on panic attack. My knees are weak, and I'm literally about to pass out. I push the pizza to the far side of the roof away from me. I finally muster out, "Sir, you're freaking me out. I have a 45 and less than $20 on me. Just take this so I can leave." When I say this, his head bobbing stops. His eyes are dark and burning a hole through me. He opens his mouth again.
It was his.
What? I ask, stunned.
It was his. The phone was his.
The guy starts coming towards my car. Not a step, but like one huge muscle spasm that propels him forward.
The phone was his.
He repeats. I'm on the verge of tears at this point. The guy jerk jumps again, now closer to the car.
The phone is not his anymore.
I blubber wordlessly, then gather myself and scream. I'm gonna call the cops, man, if you don't get out of here. I see this guy smile that creepy smile, and without moving his mouth, I hear him say in a completely different voice, a voice I've never heard before.
Go away! Stop following me! I will call the police!
In another big jerky motion, the thing reaches forward, takes the pizza off the car and places a couple of round things that I later identify as quarters on the roof. They're surrounded by this dark liquid that spreads over the roof. I don't even think, just get in the car and peel out down the road. I leave the hot sleeve for the pizza too. Leave everything. Don't even close the door all the way. I get down the road going about 80 for a quarter mile, then pull a U-turn because I don't want to get even more lost with that psycho out there. I whip down the road past the place where he had just been, and he's gone. I finally get to the end of the road and there's a stop sign to merge with the main road. I look right to make sure it's clear, then I look left. That thing's face is 12 inches from my own when I turn. I tactically have a heart attack and peel off down the road. I finally make it back to the pizza place, shaking like crazy. I smoke just to calm down, which I never do when I'm working. I walk in the front door of the pizza place. Hey, Anon, that guy at the open space house just called back. You said you forgot some food, but he only ordered the pizza, right? He wants you to come back. I start crying. I look at my phone, which had been thrown through the car when I was driving. There's 14 missed calls from his number. All the voicemails are empty except the last one. All I can hear is ragged breathing and those low grunting sounds. I'm bawling my eyes out in front of this hot counter girl, but I don't care. I sit for 10 minutes trying to calm down. Then I remember the chain she had laid on the roof. I steadily go out to the car and turn on a flashlight. The roof of the car was covered in the most viscous, weird fluid, but it smells like copper. I throw up. In the panel gap between the trunk and the end of my rear window, I find the quarters. They're covered in that same gross maple syrup goop, They're stuck to it. Along with the fluid, I can now see what appears to be soft little chunks of tissue. I go to open my car, and my veins turn to ice. There's a single line of this fluid going from the front quarter panel to the driver's side door. That freaking thing tried to open my door when it was next to me at the stop sign. I go back in, crying harder now. I tell the counter girl to try and call the number again for me. She tries over and over, but the phone goes right to voicemail. The next morning, I give the number to my uncle, who is a police captain a few towns over. He says the number is a burner phone, paid in cash, basically untraceable, and it appeared to be turned off now. I sleep with the lights on these days. The Abandoned. Posted on February 28, 2013. Location, Nevada. I live in the rural north of Nevada. You know, there's gold in them there hills. I'm hanging out with 3 bros drinking at the house. I call up some friends because it's desert party time. We drive out into the middle of nowhere on a dirt road so we can destroy some targets at target practice, then listen to some obnoxiously loud music. 30 miles of driving, completely stark, barren desert. The dirt road ends. It's not a significant location of any kind. There's other people out there already, which was weird. But there are some very attractive looking girls there. Oh lord. We set up tables and chairs and get the bumpinest car stereo going. Everyone is drinking and having a good time. It's pretty cash. But the girls hate us doing target practice. Half a dozen of us decide to work together to find the tallest nearby hill to smoke at. We get to the top, and the hill overlooks a valley. And on the opposite side of us, there's this old structure in the distance, maybe half a mile. It looks like an abandoned farmhouse, and you know what that means. It's exploring time. We gather everyone, and this is going to be awesome. It's still very early evening, and it's light out. The entourage approaches the farmhouse. It becomes clear that this is really freaking spooky. The girls are getting scared too. They're too afraid to enter the unholy basilica and go through the front door. But Christ, it's a 1940s era 2-story fancy farmhouse, and everything that was in it is still there. But it's absolutely covered, absolutely caked in rat droppings and decades of undisturbed dust. Everything is still there, like I said before. The beds, the pillows, the blankets still made up. Chandeliers, books, furniture, pictures, paintings, even an old film reel, projector, and screen. These people were obviously quite wealthy, but in 70 years the property has been pillaged. But none of this crap had been stolen? None of it sold at auction, destroyed, or recovered by friends or relatives? There's this old school mint green refrigerator with the door open. Desiccated, moldified, ancient food remaining in there. None of this is right. Not right at all. How did this happen? Why did it happen? Even I'm getting really creeped out. The wardrobes are filled with WW2 era looking clothing. Now, truthfully, I don't know the significance of the farmhouse with this story overall. The thing is, I felt like the farmhouse was a very bad place for reasons that I did not understand. I mean, nothing bad happened at the farmhouse. It was just a little odd. The more absurd and terrifying stuff went down that night, just a little while after the farmhouse. But it all began here. I went from drinking and having a good time to freaking out. The sun was starting to go down, so we needed to get back to the party camp. It was barbecue time anyway. Time to whip up some burgers and steaks on the grill. It was delicious, to be honest. My friend Dan lived down the street from me our whole lives. Essentially, we have known each other since elementary school. Dan is fat and funny and very tolerable. He comes up to me and quietly says that he just wants to go home. I try to get him to tell me what's up, but he doesn't give me a straight answer. I'm sure he was just spooked by the farmhouse like I was. But I'm back to having a good time, so I ignore him. Today was a good day after all. I brought lots of cut wood, and bro number 2 and I get the bonfire going. The light of the bonfire illuminates someone walking towards us, way out in the desert. They aren't even walking along the direction of the road. Everyone essentially is freaking out again, turning the music off and scrambling, thinking it's some freak or even worse, a cop. It's just some guy in a hoodie though. But he's walking in the middle of the pitch black desert. Somewhat confused in light of the strange circumstances, we are relieved that it's just some relatively friendly looking guy about our age, maybe no older than 20. We tell him that he scared the living daylights out of us, and asked what he was doing out here. Hiking, he says. Hiking, huh? Do you know how creepy that is, man? Someone says, referencing the fact that he was walking around randomly in the deserted plains, in the dark and by himself. Yeah, he's the creepster, someone said. We made several jokes calling him the creepster, but he seemed like a quiet and good-natured fellow, and even laughed with us. We asked him to hang out with us and grabbed him a drink. He had a sort of strange mannerism about him, and he had a scar on his upper lip, like a cleft lip scar or something. I soon noticed that the whole time this hoodie guy is acting strange, like he was waiting at the DMV or sitting in a dentist's office waiting for something to happen. I don't know how else to describe it. I remember thinking that he's probably just awkward. It starts to sink in for me maybe 20 minutes later that something incredibly wrong is going on, and I'm beginning to panic. I'm beginning to pack my stuff away. It's past midnight and some people have already left anyway. I tell bro number 2 that we're about to take off and that we should smoke before we hit the road. I tell him to get Dan because he's always down to smoke with us. But Dan is completely gone. Where the heck is Dan? We asked everyone. We asked them where they last saw him. We walk around the area with flashlights, thinking that he just slipped away to call his mom, or he peed himself, or he was doing his business out in the desert. We blow up his phone with calls and text messages to no response. He was not there. Bro number 2 and I drive around honking and calling his name with the bright lights on, trying to locate him. No joke, we looked for him for 45 minutes, but Dan was gone entirely. We were only uniforms short of being a hunting party, but there was no trace of him. We were hoping, praying that Dan was serious about going home and getting a ride with one of the guys who left earlier. Now we really needed to leave, but the least we could do was drop by his house to see if he was there. For some reason, as everyone's leaving, all the other folks assumed that we were going to take care of the hoodie guy. They got in their cars and said goodbye. I'm the last driver, and I would feel like a jerk leaving the hoodie guy out in the desert. How would he get home otherwise? How did he even get out there? Anyway, I offer to give him a ride. I'm actually sweating on the trip home. Bro number 2 is in the passenger seat, and he asks where he lives. He gives us verbal directions to a street, Calle de la Plata. My stomach drops instantly. That's the street where Dan and I live. Bro number 2 is only a short distance away from that. We say nothing. There is no, oh wow, we live there too, or how long have you lived there? The rest of the ride is just stunned silence. We bring him to the major intersection, just a block away from where Dan lives. We drop him off there and he thanks us. Then we go to Dan's house. His mom is there, saying that he hasn't come home yet. We don't want to worry her, so we smile and tell her not to worry. He must have gone off to party with some other troop. I call Dan in the morning. I think it was one of the most emotional conversations I've ever had in my life. I was literally in tears, happy to see him. Then I got a load of Dan's story. His story goes as follows. He watched us leave the party camp last night. He said goodbye to us. He said that we left abruptly with the hoodie guy. Dan, I said, where were you last night? You were gone for at least 2 hours, and we spent the first of those hours looking in the desert for you. He said to me that he was there the whole time. No, you weren't, Dan, I reminded him. You freaking weren't. You did go take a crap or something for 2 hours somewhere, didn't you? No, he said. I was there the whole time. Completely without words, I spend a lot of time just sitting in a chair thinking over what happened. Then I get a call from bro number 2, who has a much worse story. We go over to see Brent. Brent was one of the guys who was at the party camp that night. He brought the chicks, and the chicks were over there too that day when we went to get the story from Brent. They said we never looked for Dan. They said that Dan never went missing. He had been there the whole time, and we left before he did. They say that we arrived to the camp with the hoodie guy, and that he was with us in our car when we got there. I'm trying to calm down and explain to them that that is impossible. We had arrived with Dan. Why did you call him the creepster then? I asked her. I don't know, he was just really quiet and had that weird scar. No, that's impossible, I said. We all saw him and were creeped out by him coming right out of the desert like that. He walked out of the darkness. That's why you called him creepster in the first place. Bro number 2 and I are yelling at the top of our lungs. They don't seem to understand what we are so upset about. They keep telling us to calm down. They don't remember how strange it was that he was in the middle of the desert. Because he came with us, supposedly. Dan does not really ever hang out with us anymore. He was always a fun guy to be around. But his mom says he's going through some personal things. But since March 2012, he doesn't really even talk to me or bro number 2. Sometimes I wonder if my friends have some sort of amnesia or collective block. Sometimes I wonder what happened to Dan when he was gone for 2 hours. Sometimes I wonder if the hoodie guy was even a freaking human being. The Sleepover. Posted on April 21st, 2013. Location: California. I've never shared this story before, and after this I don't really intend to again. This thread has really kept me good company as I've drifted in and out with this pounding migraine. I don't really like talking about this time in my life, but I want to contribute. When I was 10 to 12, I lived with my mother. We were below poverty level poor. We lived up in the mountains around Santa Cruz, California, and my mother had a friend that owned a large bit of property up there. He let us stay in a trailer. Our trailer was very small and was right beside a garden. A chain link fence ran around the garden to keep the dog the owner had out, along with other animals. Deer and things were very common in that area. Also, inside the fence was a single room. It was built like a tiny house, but it was only a single room inside. This room had electricity, and since our trailer didn't, I spent a lot of my time in there, especially as I was so into video games. There was one thing you should know right now. This small fenced-in area was only a small part of the property, but most of it was heavily forested. I refused to leave that fenced-in area because the owner's dog had been mistreated by children in the past and was very sketchy towards me all the time. If I was alone, it would bite at me, even through the fence. The fence was tall, at least 7 feet high, and wasn't movable though, so as long as the gate was closed, I was safe. Besides the trailer in that small little room, there was no one else and nothing else for miles. Now I tell you all this because I think it's important you understand what kind of scene this was before I really get into it. Now then, I brought friends up there to sleep over from time to time. We all thought it was pretty cool, you know, like camping out. Besides, we would get our own room to stay in to play video games all night long. It was like a dream come true, to me anyway. There was one downside though. When it got dark out, it got really dark out. No city around, and the trailer would not light up. There was no bathroom to use in the room, and you would have to walk through the garden in order to get to the trailer to use it. Odd things happened out there from time to time. It was always something that could be somewhat easily explained away. Noises like people working at night sometimes. Or once me and my friend were sitting out in the garden, and we saw a shadow as big as a small bear bound up a tree. But the tree didn't shake like there was weight on it. That mean dog also creeped me out, but angry dog, I was a kid, it happens. Now I am a scaredy cat. I always have been. I have trouble walking through the house if I'm alone. My friends, however, tend to be more outgoing than me, just the kinds of people I get along with. On this occasion, I had a friend over named Jacob. We were staying up all night playing Sonic the Hedgehog 3. It was on my Sega Genesis on an old ratty television. We started playing as the sun went down, and by the time we were finishing up the game, it was about 2 a.m. That's when we heard it. We turned off the game, getting ready to find something else to play. There was a rumbling in the woods behind the room we were in, like someone was rolling something really heavy around. We hadn't heard it before because the noise from what we were playing was quite loud. Immediately, I had goosebumps. Jacob wasn't really worried about it, but it's not like there was someone else's house or yard right over there. It was just forest for miles. Yet it sounded like someone was constructing something, dragging or rolling something really big. Eventually, Jacob convinced me to just play more games and ignore it. I agreed on the condition that we turn the volume down so we could hear if something else happened. We started playing, and I didn't even notice the noise stop because I was getting so engrossed. A couple of hours later, Jacob said he needed to use the bathroom. I was feeling fine by then, so I was fine when he left to the trailer to relieve himself. He was taking a while, so eventually I decided I was going to go check on him. Besides, I could use the bathroom myself and grab a snack while I was at it. I opened the door to leave, and he was just standing at the doorway right there, right outside the door facing it. It scared the crap out of me. I asked him what he was doing, and he just continued to stand there, blocking the exit. I realized he must have snuck up to the door because I could hear him walk away from the room, but I hadn't heard him walk back up to it like this. It was super quiet. I should have been able to hear him do that. He refused to say anything or respond to me, still just standing there. I told him he was really creeping me out, but it wasn't like him to try and scare me like this. Finally, I decided to just go to the trailer and use the bathroom myself, partially because I knew my mother was asleep in there. I told him what I was doing and then moved past him. When I moved past him, though, I had to push him out of my way a little, and his skin felt frozen, like ice cold to the touch. I jumped back a little. But it was a cold night, I told myself, and he had been standing out there for like half an hour. So I figured that was to be expected. I walked as quickly as I could over to the trailer, and he followed me, like right on my tail. It was unnerving. I joked a little, saying that he already surprised me by scaring me at the door, and that the joke was over. Finally, I made it to the trailer and walked in. He didn't follow, just stayed at that doorway as well. I checked on my mom, who was still sleeping, then turned to go to the bathroom. Now, it being a porta potty, we keep the bathroom door shut because, well, it smells bad. When I reach for the door and try to open it, though, it's locked. A nervous, familiar voice came from behind the door. I'm in here. I quickly turned to look at Jacob, but the door was still open and there was nothing there but pitch black night. I freeze in terror. I would have saw him, heard him go to the bathroom door and open it, if he had come in from behind me. There's no way to do it quietly out here. The trailer creaks like crazy. I yelped so loudly that my mom woke up. I stared at the doorway, unable to move a muscle. She got up, walked over there, and looked out. Not seeing anything, she closed the door and asked me what was wrong. By now, Jacob was coming out of the bathroom and acting perfectly normal, but a bit confused. I explained what I'd experienced. Jacob said that he had been taking a while in the bathroom, and that's why he'd been gone so long. Neither of them believed my story at all, no matter how much I insisted. My mom was sure that I was just sleepy and imagined it, and Jacob thought I was pranking him. So my mom gets out a big flashlight and walks us back to the room. She tells us to just go to bed, then leaves and goes back to bed herself. Now, this room doesn't have any windows or anything, so after a while I calmed down a bit. I'm telling myself that my mom was right. I must have had like a waking dream or something. Jacob insists he was in the bathroom the whole time, and I'm inclined to believe him because it doesn't make sense otherwise. So I settle down. I'm a little rattled, but I'm thinking I can just sleep it off. Suddenly, that dog beyond the fence goes nuts. He's right behind us. The room is up against the fence, so the dog must have been like right behind the room on the other side. I felt like I jumped so high I was surprised I didn't hit the roof. Jacob's laughing at me. That dog must be barking at a squirrel or something. Calm down. It keeps barking like that for a long time though, before it suddenly stops and gets replaced by whimpering. Then the dog runs away. There are about 45 seconds of silence before we hear something new. A small scratching sound on the back wall of the room. We both try to be as silent as we can, listening. Eventually it stops. After 5 minutes or so of silence, Jacob decides to be brave. He insists he's going to go get my mother up, to tell her something weird is happening, and we're going to go from there. I wish he wouldn't leave me alone, but there was no way I was going out there, with him or not. He arms himself as best he can, with a tennis racket. Then he takes a couple deep breaths and opens the door, dashing out. I close it as quickly as he leaves. In less than 30 seconds, I hear someone scream. Not long after, the door flies open and he comes back in looking pale as a ghost. He's breathing like he just ran a marathon. His eyes are as big as dinner plates. I ask what's going on like 4 times before he finally starts getting words out. He tells me he walked out there, and as he was walking through the garden as quick as he could, he saw my mom, just standing there. He tried to talk to her, but she stared at him with a blank expression. Getting super creeped out because of what happened to me earlier, he took a couple more steps towards her, telling her that he thought that something was in the woods. Suddenly, her face turned to an awkward smile. Then he realized something horrible. He hadn't noticed sooner because of the darkness and how much of a hurry he had been in. She was on the other side of the fence. Now, the door to this room does not lock, and as I explained earlier, this room had no windows. He had been trying to move stuff in front of the door as he told this story, and by the end I was helping him. In retrospect, whatever was harassing us seemed to be averse to actually entering the room or trailer, because the Jacob one didn't come in either time, even though he should have been able to, and this room was not at all sturdy. Either way, we stacked everything we could against that door, thinking somehow that like cartoons this would definitely keep that monster out. For the rest of the night, we heard scratching coming from all around the room. I cried. Jacob looked like his mind had left his body with fear. At one point, I swear I heard it speak too. I heard it from right next to where I was resting against the wall, and it was in my mother's voice, quietly. The same exact phrasing and intonation she had used earlier in the night.
"What's wrong? Go to sleep."
The sun came up eventually, and the scratching ended. We heard my mom exit the trailer and come up to the door. This time we actually heard those footsteps. We absolutely refused to leave the room though. My mom had to go get the property owner and have him take the door off. When we saw that it was actually her, I burst into tears again. We never had any experiences like these again, and we eventually moved away. But that night, it still haunts me. I refuse to go out at night unless I'm with a bunch of people, and I will never live in the woods again. The Woods. Posted on March 3rd, 2013. Location, Missouri. I'm a chemical guy. We all go in the middle of the woods to do training. This happened during an FTX out in the woods, next to a ridge and a large stream bed. Every night there is a roaming guard of 2 privates. We have our little blanket adapters, and we just roam around, making sure no one's up to no good. This happened one night when me and a buddy of mine are posted on a couple of stumps by one of the light systems that they drag out there. It's about 0300. Me and my pal are set up under the lamps, soaking in the warm exhaust because it's 25 degrees out, and we were not going to move at this point. We're watching the tents, joking how if anyone was going to do the nasty, it'd be difficult due to the cold. I nudge my friend and tell him he can catch a nap. He quickly lulls off and is snoozing. Snow is slowly drifting down through the trees, peacefully. I'm just kind of staring into the woods when I hear that crunch of snow. It's extremely faint and I have to perk up my ears to make it out. I think to myself, there's no way. They're gonna get frozen out there. I nudge my buddy awake and tell him there's a DS in the woods, a drill sergeant. He perks up, and we are both watching the woodline. Sure enough, we see a shadow come in from the woodline, crouching low. Amazing he can be that quiet in the snow. We both grin. Last time this actually happened, they dragged someone out and tied them up to a tree for giggles. The shadow gets well within the camp line, crouching really low. Looking back, it was odd. One of the tents rustle, and the shadow instantly stands up to full height. And dang, I'd say it was at least 7 feet tall. And are those horns on its head? My buddy and I suck in our breaths and our eyes are wide. That is not a drill sergeant. Whatever it was opens a tent flap real slow and looks inside it. At this time, my buddy has found the little radio we were given in case we need to contact the actual drill sergeants. My buddy is freaking out and trying to get them out there, which causes them to freak out and come ghosting out of the freaking shadows. They startle us and my buddy yells. Then we all hear a loud grunt. All our heads turn to see this goat thing dragging one of the privates out. It's trying to drag her out of the camp. Nothing really happens for what feels like hours. It feels so surreal staring this thing down. We're awakened when the female drill sergeant screams out a war cry and launches herself at the thing at a full sprint. The rest of the drill sergeants pull out their pistols and charge down to try and get that private back. He hops up and runs down, scrambling to grab the chick and haul her back. The drill sergeants are taking off to chase whatever that thing was away from the camp. As we are dragging the chick away, the entire camp is up now, setting up a perimeter around the AHA and Chow tent, 2 areas that have constant light. Tense beyond belief, everyone has their bayonets in their hands. The drill sergeants come back an hour later looking worse for wear. Then we all load up in the Humvees and get out of there. Apparently, the drill sergeants had chased the thing over a creek, at which it took off into the underbrush. The female soldier was okay. Whatever it was had smothered her until she passed out, obviously wanting to take her alive. Higher command was weirded out by this, but didn't seem fazed by it, and had simply made the drill sergeants carry fully loaded M4s for the next rotations. Strange Skinwalker thing in the woods? Nah, don't worry about it. Now have some more firepower. Now there are tons of these stories. Stories of people hauling tail out of the woods in full kit, blubbering and getting discharged due to mental instability. I have one other story, and this is from a friend of mine who went to MP training there. The friend was on his last FTX in the middle of winter. He is set up with 3 other people in a tower overlooking a huge expansion of woods. A scheduled OPFOR attack happens. Everyone's having fun, firing blanks, all that. Suddenly, a couple of dudes come barreling out of the woods carrying a guy who has a freaking tree branch lodged into his thigh. Everyone stops. We leap into action and drag him into the FOB. He is screaming, crying literally, "The deer man." Drill sergeants instantly scramble for their M4s and get on a loudspeaker, demanding every private into their little hutches. Then they break a major rule, handing out live ammo to everyone. And it's so tense. Soon enough, the only sound is that guy screaming, The deer man, he's out there, Jesus Christ." And he keeps screaming this until the medics arrive. The Other, posted on March 2nd, 2013. Location, South Carolina. I was 16 years old, living in the backwoods of South Carolina. You hear stories from local kids of the creepy things happening in the woods, particularly 2 miles from my new house. I decide I had to check it out. It can't be that scary, right? Heavy fog all of a sudden rolls in, bringing a smell of copper and burned hair. The hairs on the back of my neck start to stand on end. I start hearing whispers and giggles. Here's something running in the woods near me. It's getting louder, closer. I turn around to see something crawling extremely fast and low to the ground on 4 legs, but it seemed to have arms and legs like a person. I scream in fear, getting its attention by accident. This causes it to screech and retreat back into the woods. The fog lifts and smell suddenly goes away, but I nope right out of there. But when I get home, I swear to God, I caught a glimpse of it in my driveway. As I'm walking toward the door when I feel it's safe, I end up blacking out. When I wake up, I'm on top of my dad's car. My dad is over me trying to get me to wake up. I tell my dad what's happening while my ears are ringing. He laughs at me, tells me it is just my imagination. Everything returns to normal, and it stays normal for the next 3 hours. My dad suddenly says, "Hey Jake, mind getting me those steaks out of the fridge?" I look at him and say, "Why did you call me Jake, Dad?" "Because my name has never been Jake." He suddenly looks at me full of hatred. I shut up and give him the steaks anyway. He takes the uncooked steaks into his room and locks the door. He comes out an hour later with the package and throws it away. I'm not even gonna ask. Around 11 p.m. he tells me to go to bed, which is odd because it's Friday, and he doesn't usually care if I stay up. But I do as I'm told and go into my room. At around 3:15 my door opens. It's my dad. I don't say anything and I pretend to sleep. But that smell of copper returns to the air, and it makes me sick to my stomach. He sits on the edge of my bed and just stares at me. It lasts for several minutes. He then mumbles something under his breath. It was in a voice that I didn't recognize. My veins froze and I just laid there. When he got up and left, my heart sank. I just laid awake until morning. The next morning I woke up and my dad is asleep on his lazy boy. He's got some red coming from his nose. I wake him up and I'm still spooked about the other day. I ask him about his nose and he has no idea where it came from. "Maybe it's just random," he said. I ask him about the night before and he has no idea what I'm talking about. He doesn't even remember waking me up. My heart sinks again. When he states that it was still Friday, I know for a fact that it's Saturday, but he argues with me until I show him my phone. When I see his face, I know that we're both freaked out. I've never ventured out into the woods since then, and nothing strange has happened. But sometimes I will hear the front door open and close a few times during the night. 4chan is full of some very messed up stories. If you ever find yourself curious and wanting to browse that board, or boards actually, be careful, because 4chan is a bit of a rabbit hole. You could stumble upon a scary story or two, but go too deep, and you'll never come back the same. Good night. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you have your own story to share, you can share it with us at darknessprevails.org. If you'd like to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/darknessprevails, or you can shop our merchandise by clicking the shop button below if you're on YouTube. If not, you can go to teespring.com/stores/darknessprevails. Now then, as usual, here are my 5 favorite early comments from the previous full episode, about 10 park horror stories. Kane7fi says, "Ranger Smith ain't there to help you now." Of course not. He'd be 70 or 80 at this point. David Santiago Tate says, "I was getting into this right away, but then a squirrel fell off a branch behind me and gave me a heart attack. Dang, squirrels are doing a better job at scaring people than I am. I'll take notes." Very Rare says, "You should go to a haunted place around your area or somewhere else and vlog it. That would be insanely fun, but only if you come looking for me if I go missing." Cortez Castillo says, "Hey Darkness, are you afraid of parks?" No, but I'm really afraid of the spider in your profile picture. Its fangs are like 5 inches long. Jesus. And Mo says, "Next time I go to a national park, I'm just going to take my chances with the wild animals instead." Go ahead, they're usually quite cuddly when I go there. My post-cuddle session stitches are down to about 20. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Darkness Prevails. But don't you worry, because more scary stories are coming soon. So stay tuned. Until next time, here are the credits to my amazing patrons who continue to donate. Remember, stay safe out there and stay creepy, because this world is a strange one.